There's a first-round prospect that fits what the Bucs need, but I certainly wouldn't draft him if I were Jason Light. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. We do have a mailbag episode courtesy of those insiders coming up today, taking a bunch of draft questions, including what my draft philosophy is and who is my favorite prospect that I have yet to mention on the show. That's all coming up a little bit later. Let's start things off with a great question from insider Mike, who asks, is there a first-round talent that you feel like the Bucs should absolutely stay away from? Now, when this was asked, there was a name that immediately came to my mind. Now, Mike went on to clarify that I'm not allowed to say someone like Cam Ward and use the reason that he's a quarterback, but don't worry, I wasn't planning on copping out like that, Mike. But one name that did come to mind was Mike Green, and I spoke to an insider about that the other day. I like Mike Green, and I certainly wouldn't put him in the category of absolutely not drafting, but he does make me a little bit nervous. I think he has a really high ceiling, but to me, his floor is the lowest of any of the first-round edge rush prospects. I just feel like the competition that he faced at Marshall versus the competition that he'll face in the NFL is so drastically different that at the very least, you're dealing with a steep learning curve and probably at least a year of development before you start seeing like true results. Now, in the Bucs situation, that's perfectly fine because he wouldn't come in and immediately be a starter. He would be part of a rotation behind Hassan Reddick, behind Yaya Diaby. You still have Chris Braswell. You still have Anthony Nelson. So he would be part of the rotation. He's not a guy that you're relying on right out of the gate. Now, this could also be completely unfair and wrong, but that's kind of been my stance on Green since he started becoming the darling of draft Twitter back at the Senior Bowl. It gave me some like really bad Noah Spence flashbacks where you have a guy that just dominates in Mobile and then starts getting all this first round buzz and then he fizzles out almost immediately. Again, that may not be entirely fair to Green and I could be way, way off base, but that's just how I feel about the situation. All the measurables are there. 20%, north of 20% on his pass rush win rate, 17 sacks last season, pass and run defense grades over 90. But he was playing against Appalachian State and Old Dominion and Georgia State and Western Michigan. He also has, 2 years as a starter at Marshall, and he was great in both seasons. I'm just worried about the translation to the NFL. Instead, the name that really came to mind for me, because I understand the risk and the reward of Green, and I wouldn't bash the pick if the Bucs made it, but the one that I do not want to come on this show and talk about would be Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. And if he were to fall in the Bucs' lap at pick 19, I would let him just keep on falling into the 20s. Honestly, I just think he's a little bit overrated. He has the measurables that you want in Bowles defense, the size, the length, the speed, but he's been trending down every year since 2022. He's decent in zone, absolutely terrible in man coverage. He played in just 6 games last season. He got absolutely worked by Illinois, Washington, and Fresno State. His missed tackle percentage last season went up over 20%. In 2023, he allowed just 50% of his targets to be completed, but last year it jumped to over 61%. Look, if Will Johnson returns to his 2022 regular season form, or what he showed in the 2024 college football playoff when Michigan was on their way to winning a national championship, then he's going to be great. My hang up here is that he's been getting worse each season, and that's not the trend that I want to see in my corners, or really any player for that matter, but not when you're looking for a guy to come in and anchor a position group along with Zion McCollum for the next 5 years. The other thing that gives me pause is the injuries. That guy was riddled with them last season, and it kept him out all but 6 games. And this isn't a Benjamin Morrison or Siobhan Revell situation. I know I've talked about those guys and how I would like to see them be drafted by the Bucs. Those were different injuries. Those were season-ending injuries that both of those guys suffered. In the case of Will Johnson, these were multiple different injuries that kept creeping up, not one particular injury that ended up ending his season because he had to have surgery. So if you're looking to replace a guy like Jamel Dean, which is what we all kind of assume any selection at cornerback would be, if you're looking to replace that guy who's constantly injured, why are you going to look at someone else that's constantly injured? That just doesn't make any sense to me. So I know this may not be a popular opinion, and there are going to be people yelling at their radio right now, or they're in the YouTube comment section telling me that I'm a moron or all those things, but I stand by it. I stand by the fact that I don't think Travis Hunter is the best receiver or the best corner in this draft, in that all his hype comes from playing on both sides of the ball. And while he's good at both, he's not elite at either. So I'm also going to stand by my belief that Will Johnson isn't trending in a good direction, and it's certainly not trending, in a good enough direction to make me believe that he would be worth the Bucs pick at 19. Time's going to tell whether I'm right or wrong. I appeared to be wrong on CJ Stroud his rookie year. Last year didn't look so good. I appeared to be right on Bryce Young, in his rookie year. Then last year he starts trending up. That's the thing about the draft. We're going to come on this show. We're going to talk about draft grades. We're going to talk about other people's draft grades. I'm going to grade the draft, but you can't get a true feeling for how good these players are until they're 3 or 4 years into their career. You could have an incredible rookie season. Look at Sauce Gardner, one of the best corners in the NFL his rookie season. He's tapered off a little bit. Maybe that's not his fault. Maybe it's the situation that he's in. You take a look at my dude from Illinois, Devin Witherspoon. Incredible rookie season. Had a bit of a drop-off last year. A little bit of a sophomore slump. We're all singing the praises of Bucky Irving. Is he in for a sophomore slump? We don't know. That's why you have to take the collective of 3, 4, even 5 years of an entire draft class before you can figure out what the true hits and what the true misses were. We're all really, really quick to jump to conclusions, and maybe I'm unfairly jumping to a conclusion about Will Johnson because he had such a down year last year because of all those injuries. Maybe he bounces back and he's the second coming of Darrelle Revis. And I got to sit here and I got to eat crow. But, I look at these players. I watch them play. I read up what I can. I take a look. I've mentioned PFF numerous times. I've taken a look at their grades. I've gone back and I'll watch, why did this guy get such a high grade in this game and such a low grade in this game? You guys remember it from, when I did the Kalijah Cansey breakdown, when I did last year, the Chris Braswell breakdown, and I didn't agree with the grades that they were given in some of those games. I thought their higher rated games weren't as good as some of the lower graded games that I watched, but that's why we do all of this. So to answer your question, Mike, Will Johnson is the one that really, really gives me pause. And I would think, what? I think the Bucs would have a better opportunity drafting a corner in the second round and addressing a different position at 19 than taking Will Johnson. So if I wouldn't be interested in taking Will Johnson at pick 19, what exactly is my draft strategy? I'm going to talk about that next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder are the favorites to win the NBA Finals at plus 170, followed by the defending champion Boston Celtics at plus 185. The Cleveland Cavaliers are at plus 500, and the Los Angeles Lakers are at plus 1,700. For my money, I'm not betting against the defending champs. I think any team in the NBA is going to have a really hard time beating Boston 4 games out of 7. So that's where my money is going. But don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find the Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Insider Fausto reached out and he said, what do you think is the better draft philosophy? Drafting a guy based on production and what he did in college, or drafting a player on talent and tools and their potential upside? Fausto, this is a great question. And I hate that I have to do this to you, but the answer is both. And before you say that that's a cop-out, let me explain. It absolutely has to be a combination of the two. It's just about the right combination. I've spent a couple of shows now talking about Tennessee edge rusher James Pierce Jr., right? I did a breakdown as to why I didn't understand the character concerns. I talked about him again on Monday's episode. He has back-to-back years of really good production, but he isn't a polished product. He isn't Abdul Carter. Okay, Abdul Carter is going to come in whatever team he plays for, he is going to dominate. But Pierce has shown the ability to improve from one year to the next. So you take a look at the production that he had, and then you look at the attributes and whether or not you feel like he can develop even more and become even better. And if you look at Pierce, and I'm just using him as an example. All right, this is just, my guy that I'm pointing to explain all of this. You have to think that, he's either reached his ceiling and isn't going to be able to develop the skills to improve in his ability to get to the quarterback, or there's more to work with there. And if you look at him and you watch his film and you think that he has already reached that ceiling, then he's not worth the first round pick, because your evaluation is that what you're drafting is all you're getting. You would then turn and look to a guy like Ezaraku or Michael Williams, and you're going to see if your evaluations on them are that they show raw abilities in A, B, and C, but they're already elite at 1, 2, and 3, and which is why they had the production that they did, but they have the raw talent to mold into something more, to elevate their game to the next level, just like they're going to the next level from college to the NFL. You take a look at Jahdae Barrett, okay, and you say, look, this kid can do it all. He's good in man. He's good in zone. He's got that closing speed that you want, so he's not going to get beat deep. He can line up outside. He can line up inside. He's not going to be a project. But you also know that he has untapped potential. He is going to walk in, and as soon as he learns the system, he is going to hit the ground running. He's going to be a starter. It's the same thing with Jahad Campbell. It's the same thing with Malachi Starks or Abdul Carter or Ashton Genty. Those elite players at their position, you know that you're already getting a guy that is top tier, but they haven't reached their ceiling yet. There's still more growth there. Those are the guys you covet because you know the production already matches the tools and talent. It's the guys on day 2 and day 3 where you look at them, you look at what they put on tape compared to what they put on a stat sheet, and you say, can we develop and elevate this kid's game to the next level? Do we have the coaches? Do we have the players to help bring them up even further? Can we take Benjamin Morrison and make him a Pro Bowl corner so that we can take Jahad Campbell in the first round? Is Jeffrey Bassa the guy that pops so much on tape that we can take him on Friday because we know that he has production, but he also has the attributes, the tools, and the talent that we can get him to elevate his game so that we can grab Malachi Starks or Jahdae Barron on Thursday instead of Jahad Campbell. So these guys in college are going to have production, but that may not pan out in the NFL because who they are in college is who they will always be. They've reached the absolute peak of their abilities. Those are the guys that you typically want to pass on until day 3 when you're looking for those depth pieces. You're looking for those rotational pieces. That's how I feel about this quarterback class. I do not think that Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are walking into the NFL and becoming this year's Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. I think they're basically battling it out to be Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. So sure, they could be in the league for a decade, but not be in the league for a decade while taking their franchise, putting them on their backs and taking them to the postseason or the Super Bowl. That doesn't take away from their production in college. It just means that they didn't have the tools to develop into as polished of a player as you need to win at the next level. So, I mean, you can get mad at me if you want, but you have to take both into consideration when you're putting together your big board and you're evaluating these guys and whether or not they are going to translate to the NFL. So production plays a part, but so do the tools and the attributes. You have to be able to see that they have in them the ability to elevate their game, that they're coming in with a sense of, okay, I know I can do this, and I know I can do this, and I know I can do this, but I need help, and I'm willing to put in the work, and I'm willing to learn how to do that so that I'm an all-pro. I'm a Pro Bowler. I'm the guy that the opposing team has to worry about when they come into our house to play. So you would be really hard-pressed to find a group that has done a better job or a more consistent job of evaluating the production plus the tools and the traits to develop than the Bucs have done over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. Is losing John Spytek to the Las Vegas Raiders going to hurt that? Maybe. But, you know, Jason Light has done such a great job of putting guys in place that if you lose one, it's the same as the Bucs mentality all last season when they kept getting hit with injuries. It's the next man up. You still have Greeny in there. You still have all of the scouts that Jason Light trusts with all of these situations, all of these evaluations, all of these, you know, player interactions to really figure out who is going to be best for this franchise out of this class that's going to take the Bucs from where they were last year up to the same level as the Lions and the Eagles, arguably as the Commanders. I mean, the Commanders were in the NFC Championship. They were the ones that knocked the Bucs out of the playoffs. So a lot is needed on defense. I know we talked yesterday about Todd Bowles not passing up on offensive talent, because of a defensive need, but trust in the process. And I can promise you this, the process for Jason Light and his crew doing this draft is a combination of evaluating the production versus the talent and the tools. The best player that I have not talked about on this show yet, that is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything that you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all of your favorite brands, Chewy has everything that your pet needs, from food and treats to toys, beds, and grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions and telehealth visits even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. AutoShip is a game changer. You can set up automatic deliveries for food, treats, or any essentials so that you never run out. You can easily change it or cancel it at any time. And I never have to stress or worry about racing out to the store to get my lovable goofball Layla her food, because Chewy makes sure that I get my AutoShip on time every time. Chewy has everything that you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the show description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Wrapping things up here on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, and insider Chris texted in and said, James, you've talked about a lot of players in the draft, whether it was fits or in your mock drafts or your time at the combine, but who is the best player that you like for the Bucs that you haven't mentioned yet on the show? And that's a really good question, because look, there are going to be 260 players that are drafted in 2 weeks. I have not gone through and watched 260 guys. I haven't gone through and watched the 300 that are going to end up in the NFL once undrafted free agency is over with. But I do my best to try to narrow it down and give you guys as much information as possible about some of the best fits that I see for the Buccaneers. I talk about guys in the positions of need. I talk about my favorite guys. I talk about guys that you ask me about. But I honestly, I can't remember every player that I mentioned on the show so far, especially with all the different mock drafts that I've done. There have been players that I've mentioned in passing because of those, though I always try to give a little bit of insight into the player if it seems like someone that I haven't taken in a mock before, or someone that I really haven't given a lot of attention to. But then, of course, there's the usual suspects that I've talked about a lot. Morrison, Barron, Starks, Campbell, Bassa, Porter, Ezeraku, Pierce, Watts, Paul, Stewart, Revel. I've talked about those guys over and over and over again, so you guys know them well. You know where I stand on them. You know what I think about them. You know how I believe they're going to fit if they are drafted by the Bucs. But my favorite player, as far as the Bucs are concerned, that I have not mentioned yet on the show, is Tennessee wide receiver Dante Thornton Jr. So Thornton spent 2 years at Oregon and 2 years at Tennessee. And this guy, buddy, could he be an amazing fit in the Buccaneers receiver room? Because, and this is a guy that they can get on day 3. Like, this is, you're talking like 5th round. He's 6'5", 215. All right. So you got plenty of size to him right out of the gate, but an absolute blazing fast receiver. You want a true deep threat to open things up vertically for this offense, something that they have been missing. How about a guy that size running a 4.3 flat 40 at the combine? His average yards per reception last year was 25.5. He only had 26 receptions, but they went for 662 yards and 6 touchdowns. His PFF grade for last year on passes 20 plus yards down the field, 99.9. That's insane. The only spot where Thornton struggled last year was on passes behind the line of scrimmage. So it is mind-boggling that he had so few opportunities last year for a team that was in the college football playoff. He can add a spark to your return game. He can take the top off the defense. He can be a slant guy where you just get the ball in his hands and then let his speed take over. And the fact that you can probably get him in the 5th round is absolutely crazy. I know I've talked about the Bucs taking a receiver on day 2. I know Todd Bowles has talked about receiver being a position that he was watching very closely at the combine, because let's be honest, Trey Palmer is not the answer. Sterling Shepard, he's not the answer either. I like Sterling. He was a pivotal piece of the Buccaneers offense last year, especially when Mike and Chris went down. But he's not going to be in the league much longer. For that matter, Mike Evans isn't going to be in the league much longer either. So the Bucs drafting a receiver at all in 2 weeks should not come as a surprise to anyone. When I think about what the Bucs would be looking for in that position, the thing that comes to mind is speed, because that's what the receiver group lacks so much right now. They do not have anyone with elite speed. Mike has deceptive speed. Chris Godwin has breakaway speed. They don't have elite speed. And you mean to tell me that on day 3, you can get a guy that's basically the same size as Mike Evans. He's bigger than Godwin. He's bigger than McMillan. And he runs a 4.3? Come on. That's not fair to the rest of the league. Flat out, that is not fair to add a weapon like that to an offense that has Mike, Chris, J-Mac, Bucky, Rashad, and Cade Otton. I know I usually talk a lot for you longtime everydayers, for you everydayers that have been with me and David from the jump. I love talking about running backs at the draft because every year it seemed like the Bucs needed a running back. So I would dive head first into that position because those are my favorite players to watch and evaluate. I love sitting down and watching running back prospects that could potentially wind up with the Bucs. And I still think that the Bucs need to add another one. I don't think that they can get through the season with just Rashad, Bucky, and Tucker. They've got to add a fourth. But I don't really love anyone in this class at running back that you're going to get on day 3. I like some of them. And I think there are some running backs that you could get on day 3 that would help this team. But when I look at the receivers that you can get on day 3 that can come in, and there's a lot to like. Thornton, Pat Bryant, Torrey Horton, Ty Felton, Nick Nash, Kobe Hudson. But man, I can't get over the combination of size and speed that Thornton would bring to this team. They wouldn't need him to be a stud right away. Like, you drafted Jalen last year to come in and be your wide receiver 3. And that was something that the Bucs have been missing for a couple of years. Basically, ever since Godwin went down with an ACL and Antonio Brown lost his mind and stripped his clothes off and ran off of the field, the Bucs have needed a wide receiver 3. The next year they tried with Julio, which was cool, except Julio wasn't Julio anymore. He was injury prone. So that's not what the Bucs are looking for here. They have their trio. You are looking for a guy that you can bring in that offers something that you don't already have. That's that elite speed. But right out of the gate, he's situational. Okay? He can grow with the offense throughout the season. He could add a little bit on special teams. You don't want Bucky back there returning kicks. That's not going to happen this year like it did last year. You need someone back there returning punts. I don't know if Thornton can return punts. We would find out in training camp. I'll bet you he would be in the mix. But I would say that as far as fits for Tampa, of players that I hadn't mentioned on this show, he is pretty easily my favorite. And I don't know. Check him out. Go watch some Tennessee games and watch what this guy can do with the ball in his hands, and then imagine him doing that wearing red and pewter. So that is going to do it for today's episode. Please, if you have mailbag questions and you're not an insider, become an insider. This is a great time to do it. We got the draft coming up in 2 weeks. Go ahead, become an insider. There's going to be tons of draft talk with me and the insiders all that weekend. You can do that by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Make sure that you are following on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs. And of course, make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. But for those that aren't an insider, if you have a mailbag question about the draft that you want to ask, go ahead and send it to the DMs at LockedOnBucs on Twitter. Those DMs are open. even if we're not following each other, you can still DM me and ask your draft related questions. But hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.